Wow, why I was sent to Vietnam? Because I was ordered to go. I really didn't have much concept about what was going on in Vietnam. I was naively, a 21-year-old soldier. As a matter of fact, I remember when we went by troop ship, and I remember we all knew we were going to Vietnam, but I don't think anybody really had a real clear idea even where that was. And I remember one of the days on the troop ship, a bunch of us were standing around at the base of the staircase, and there was a map of the world above it. And some old master sergeant came up there, and he pointed to French Indochina, and he said, "That's where we're going, boys." And as a stamp collector, I knew what French Indochina was, but I really didn't know where Vietnam was. So that was my first clear vision of actually where we were going. And I knew about the domino theory, and I knew about communism, and I figured that was what we were doing, is we were stopping the spread of communism. Well, I was a forward observer for 81 millimeter mortars, and which meant that every company in the line companies had a mortar platoon, and there was one person that was the forward observer who was sent out to whatever one of the platoons was making contact or needed somebody to call in fire support from our guns, and so that was what my job was at X-ray and at Albany. Later on, we stopped using forward observers because everybody was forward, and we didn't really need anybody out there for, particularly with that job. But and we stopped carrying 3 guns, and we only carried 1 gun. So the role of the mortar platoon changed over time as we were there. I was in B Company, 2nd of the 7th, 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry, and because of the situation when we went overseas to begin with, everybody with 90 days or more who was in the Army at the time went overseas. And by the time my Drang came up in the middle of November, there were a lot of guys that were rotating home or gonna rotate home. We had a lot of men in the unit that were old. Our fire direction chief was Sergeant Matthew, who was an E6 from World War II. And so the point is that the companies were very under strength. So when the battalion was ordered to go into X-ray by Colonel Moore, they were shorthanded enough that they got another company from a sister battalion, and my company commander was Myron Derrick, who was an incredible company commander. Colonel Moore said that he was the best company commander he'd ever known, including himself. So Colonel Moore liked to use B Company, and so we assaulted X-ray with his battalion. And at the time, my company was protecting some 8-inch howitzers that were track-mounted at Plainme Special Forces Camp, and we got called there to go into X-ray, and we assaulted X-ray late in the afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock, and when we got there, I remember my Captain Derrick reporting into the anthill with Colonel Moore and finding out where we were supposed to go, and they sent the majority of the company, the line platoons, on one side of the landing zone, and they sent my platoon, the mortar platoon, to the rear, sort of the rear of the landing zone. And they took our FDC section, the Fire Direction Control section, and they consolidated that into D Company, 1st to the 7th. And I was with the 3 mortar tubes that we had set up, and by the time we got the mortar tubes set up and dug very shallow pits for them, it was dark. And I assumed, and everybody in my platoon assumed, that we had an infantry platoon or something out in front of us, and we were safely behind the lines. So I dug a shallow foxhole this deep in case we got mortared, but I wasn't expecting to fight out of it or anything. And frankly, I went to sleep. And the next morning, as it began to get light, I was waiting for it to get light enough to make some coffee, and so made some coffee, and the platoon sergeant and I were standing around looking out to our front, and the elephant grass was about chest high. We're looking out there, and we had our 3 guns placed, one to our left, one in the center, and one to the right. And we're looking over, and we could just see the tops of the mortars above the grass. And I saw a soldier about 30 yards in front of us in a khaki uniform and a pith helmet. And he was standing in front of us, and we saw him run across, and a couple other soldiers dressed like that came across. And having never seen a North Vietnamese soldier, the platoon sergeant and I looked at one another and said, who are those guys? Are those the Australians? Are they out in front of us? Right? And then we saw a light machine gun run across to our front, and when they opened up on us, we realized that they were the North Vietnamese. So no, there wasn't anybody in front of us. And the mortar platoon had a little firefight at that point. We ended up with 1 killed and 5 wounded in that. And Sergeant Buzo Alvarez from Ponce, Puerto Rico, was the first platoon, the second squad leader, gun number 2, and he was on the left. And when the shooting started early on, had the soldiers that were with Buzo Alvarez tried to run back to where I and the platoon sergeant and his RTO were standing, and back to Sergeant Ratledge's number 1 gun, which was a little less forward than they were. And the first soldier to run back was Fred Bush, and Fred Bush got back safely, and then Jose Gonzalez came running back towards us, and he got shot by the machine gun several times, not killed, but severely wounded. And then we asked to, if there was anybody else out there, and there was just Sergeant Ratledge, and no one was sure whether or not Sergeant Ratledge was dead or alive, and the machine gun was very, very close to his mortar, so we didn't dare throw hand grenades at it because we were afraid we'd kill Sergeant Ratledge. So we were debating about what to do about it, and the Sergeant Usselton's RTO's radio telephone operator, Virgie Hibbler, threw down his pack and started crawling out to Buzo Alvarez's foxhole. So I was there. I couldn't let him go by himself, so I followed Virgie's heels out to the foxhole, and we got out to the foxhole, and there was Buzo Alvarez laying on the side of the mortar pit, and he was dead. So the machine gun, it turned out, was right on the edge of the mortar pit, and we were literally almost within touching distance of it, but it didn't see us. So we crawled back and we said, Alvarez is dead, so we can throw hand grenades. And somebody said, well, where was he wounded? And I said, well, I don't know, I didn't see a wound. So he said, well, how do you know he was dead? So I said, well, really, he was dead. So did you feel a pulse? I said, well, no. He said, well, you can tell if a man's dead if you hold a mirror under his nose. So somebody had a mirror. So they handed us a mirror, and Virgie and I crawled back out to the mortar pit again, and at that point the machine gun was firing, and we held a mirror under his nose, and he was still dead. But we didn't want to take the chance of somebody accusing us of having him not dead again, so we dragged him back, and he was a big man. And as we started dragging him, the machine gun noticed that there was somebody there, and fortunately our guys started shooting back, and so we managed to get back without getting shot, and shortly dispatched the machine gun with hand grenades. But as I say, we had 4 men finally wounded in that, and Buzo Alvarez unfortunately was killed. When I go see panel 3E, my eyes are immediately drawn to Buzo Alvarez's name, who is almost in the center of the panel. And many of the other guys that are on that panel were people that I knew too, that I served with, but they're all very dear to me. I can almost almost always makes me cry when I go see that the first time. Even just thinking about it. It's a very sacred place. And after our banquets here, we usually went down at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning when it was still just getting light, and we'd go down and we'd read the names of the 305 men that are listed on that panel, and we'd sing "God Bless America," and have a little silence there, and watch the sun come up and get on with our day. And it was a very private time for all of us that were there, and a very wonderful time, and I cherish those moments. You know, people ask about how heroes are made and how they would behave in combat. People are always concerned about, you know, I don't know how I'd be. Well, you know, most people rise to the occasion, you know. I mean, the opportunity to become a hero, it doesn't come up very often. I mean, soldiers have a job to do, and their job is to be brave, and their job is to do what they're supposed to do. But, you know, to be a hero means that you make a sacrifice not for yourself, but, you know, for somebody else. And those opportunities don't come up. But when they do come up, people do them, you know, and people are a lot braver and a lot more dependable than maybe people would think. And the only people that really know what combat is are the people that have been in combat. So it's reassuring to us to be around other people that have had that experience. So we love one another for that. And you know, it's been said 100 times, you know, that men don't fight for mother and apple pie and God and country, they fight for one another, and that's what they do. And so when I'm here with my brothers, you know, they're just so special. I can't say enough about that.